Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Good morning, Suresh.
Good morning.
Morning, James.
So, I hope you would have done some practice on the variable declaration using the control statements. So, we'll carry on. The next topic that we have is within the fundamentals is the error handling and debugging. So, as we know that there are two different kind of errors in any language that we handle. One is the compile time errors and the other one is the runtime errors. So compile time errors need to be fixed before you run your program. So like in Java or in .NET, when you write any code in your editor, so it gives some kind of warning or it gives some kind of error message. So that is the compile time errors. And the other one is your runtime errors. When you run it, it throws some errors based on what kind of exception it is being raised or error being raised. So let's suppose if I have a sequence and I just give some message and so as a message box I need to pass some kind of string within the message dialog box. So it is showing an exclamation mark, so that is showing there is some error within the sequence. So unless you fix it, you can't run it. So if you try to run it, then it will throw a message that the sequence or this file has some error. So unless you fix it, it is not going to work. So once you fix it, your exclamation on that error sign get removed. So when you have so this is the way you can see if there is any error, then it will show the sequence and within that sequence which activity has that an error. So if you have another sequence within that, and I also copy this one into this. So in this you can see it is showing there is some error in this message box, and this is there is another error message within this message box. So this is the compile time errors that you can see in the UiPath. Unless you fix it, so when you try to run the program which still has those compile time error, then it will show this message: the workflow has validation error, review and resolve, and then check it. There is also one button, validate. So if there is no error within your sequence, it will say everything is fine. So let me give some. Now it will say no validation error found. So we are more interested in handling the runtime errors. So in all the languages do we do we do error handling, right? And how do we handle errors? For that we need to have some 10 classes. So if we are into the Java background, so what we do when we want to handle an error. So let's suppose there is a message box and I just declare one variable. Now A is of string and I just call to upper. Now let me run it. So I have not initialized this variable, so it is throwing one error message. So if there is an error message, that means the runtime error message. This kind of dialog you will see. Main has thrown an exception. Main is your sequence file. Then object reference not set to a instance of an object. This error usually occur when using a variable that has not been initialized. So like in Java, we have the null pointer exception. Similarly, in .NET, we use the null reference exception. And these errors are being logged into a log file. So if you want to see the log file, so where on day one I explained that where these when you install the UiPath and so it is installed under the C program files under the UiPath Studio. That's the location of the UiPath. And the logs are there into your profile under the app data local, because I have my local profile, so local, then UiPath, then logs. So this is the location of the log files. So whenever you will execute your script, those messages would be logged into this file. So this is today date and exception.log. So if you open it, you will find these error messages which is being logged into the system. So if you go down, you will find this error message which has also been logged into your log file. So this thrown an as error message. So until unless you fix it, your program will get abruptly terminated. So you want your program to run and it should not crash. So that is why we need to handle those errors. And how we handle those errors so that your program don't get terminated, we have different statements in Java or in .NET. Similarly, in UiPath we have error handling statements. So these are called try, catch, and finally block. Try, block, then catch, and finally. So we know that how we use the try, catch block within Java. So what you do is you put your statement under the try, catch block and put the respective exceptions within your catch block. For example, this is a snippet in Java, catch, exception, E, then something, then finally. That's the way you enclose your code snippet within your try catch block, and exception is the kind of exception which will be thrown at runtime. So this particular catch block is going to handle, because exception is the parent class for other subclasses. So you can have multiple catch exceptions also. For this try catch, I can have another, for example, file not found or null pointer exception. So depending upon what kind of error being raised, this particular catch block or this particular catch block will be executed. Similarly, in UiPath, we have these statements or these blocks which help you to handle your exceptions, and your program will not be terminated accordingly. Let's suppose I'm expecting this value to be coming from some PDF file or some kind of mainframe or an Excel sheet or CSV file, and somehow this value come as a null. It could be an address of an employee, or it could be phone number of an employee which has come as a null. So if it is coming null and you are doing some kind of operation on your object, so in this case I want to convert the name of an employee to an uppercase, and this name is coming from my external different application. So in that case, you need to handle this exception. How we can handle that exception so that your program should not be terminated, at the same time you get a meaningful message. So what we will do, we will use the try catch block. So there are two ways you can use the try catch block. One is you can find the try catch block within your array handling. The other way is that you just click your activity and you want to handle the errors which might come from this particular activity. So what you can do, there is a option surround with try catch block. So either you can drag and drop, or you can use surround your activity using the try. So just right button and you will get this option. So there are two ways to handle it. Now what we have done, this is the again a container for for handling the message. So anything which is there into this particular container will be handled by the respective catch or finality. So this is again a container. So you can give the name as parent try catch. So you can give a meaningful name. Now you should have some block for the catches. Now here in Java we use the catch. In UiPath it uses the word catches because you can have multiple catch blocks, so that is why here it is plural. Now let me put a catch block for this, and let it be, so this is the different classes. Like in Java we need to specify the class name, so here also we have the classes. Let's suppose if we have system.exception, right? So this is a variable name, could be anything. Now what that means, if it is in Java, what you do, catch exception E. So that's E variable is going to hold the reference of your exception object. So this is the block for this particular catch. You can have multiple catches, and let me put some kind of messages. So just drag and drop here and see. So let me run this. So this is the message got printed. Message log initialize the, please initialize the string object. What we have done within the try catch, this is the try block. This is the statement which might throw an exception, and I have used a, which has not been initialized with any default value, or I have not created an object for this, and it throw an exception. Now exception in .NET, which is a parent class, just like in Java, which is the parent class, we have two different classes. One is the throwable and the exception. So null pointer exception is a part of your exception, which is a parent class. Similarly, you can use the direct and exception, but if you want to have more specific exception, then what we can do, so this will throw null reference exception and message box. Now I also want to print what is an exception message which has been printed. I can give any meaningful reference name, RF or exception or E. So I will use E. So you will have all those methods within the exception class. So I will use the message. It will display the message, error message. So let me run it. So this was the message which is thrown by the UiPath object reference not set an object. So just like when you say e.print trace, so it print all those stack trace for your exception. Similarly, within the null reference exception, which is a class, it has all those methods which you can use to log those messages into your log file or wherever you want to do. So these which has inner exception, leave it, stack trace. So let me print it. So this is the stack trace, right? Or in Java we use the print trace. So this is the way you get more meaningful from where the exception has been triggered and what are the sequence when and where it has terminated or crashed. So you can use the normal methods of the exception. Now, if we have a different exception, like in Java, we can have multiple exceptions, exception 1 and 2, depending on the most appropriate reference that could be assigned to its parent class. That particular catch would be executed. Now, let's suppose if I don't put the null reference, I use system io.exception, then I use exception, and both this one, then I use exception dot message, right? And here also I just put inside IO exception dot message. So let me run it. So object reference not set. Let us see which part got executed. And inside exception. So inside exception. So that's the, so it didn't being cached by the IO exception. It has been handled by the exception, just like in Java or in .NET. Same. Then there are certain areas which you want to execute it whenever an exception is being raised or whenever there is no exception is being raised. Just like we have the finally block, we can have an activity. So inside finally, so those who know Java and .NET, you know why we use the finally block. And similarly, you can use the finally block if you want to clean up some memory or close files or close the database connection, etc. Irrespective of an exception being raised. So you will place those statements within the finally block. Now let me run it. So it has inside finally block. So why it is important to handle your exceptions? Let us take a real example. In this case, so I've done some kind of automation so that I can instead of the human being, a bot should be able to enter the user and the password. So when I will run it, what will happen? So it will write into the dialog window of the user and the password. Okay, so this kind of automation which I have done. That means on behalf of user, the robot is going to enter the user and password. Now what I will do, I will just change, or I will close my browser. Right, and let me run it again. So you will get a message after 3 seconds. This is an exception it has thrown. Exception has thrown an exception, cannot find UI element corresponding to this selector, source, blah, blah, blah. So you have seen that I have closed the browser and I have asked bot to log in into my with my credentials. So bot is unable to find that web page which I have trained to enter my login credentials. So there could be many reasons. Maybe the page is not loaded timely. Maybe your bandwidth is too slow. Just like in today's scenario, DXC has choked the YouTube and Facebook to let people work, which is good. So you are trying to download some kind of file from your network or from your FTP server, and it is taking long time. In that scenario, you should be able to handle those exceptions. Now that's the reason we should have a way where my program should not be terminated abruptly, and I should be able to handle those exceptions because we can see those exceptions, so we can understand what could be the reason, but a bot can't. And hence we need to make a logic where if the page is not loaded after some time, then either the error message should be thrown or we can iterate after 5 minutes, after 2 minutes to check whether the page is loaded or not. So, so that is the reason we need to handle those exceptions, and hence we need to learn why and how you can handle those exceptions in UiPath. Now we have the try and catch block, and we can have a nested try catch block also. So there is one statement. Is one statement, this is one statement, this is one statement, and within this there is another try catch. And there is some statement, and finally there is the catch block. Okay, so so this we do very often in any of the language. We do a nesting of try catch block. So if the inner try catch is unable to handle your exception, you throw that exception to its outer exception, and then finally you print some meaningful message, right? That's the way we do in our language. Similarly, in UiPath, you can have a nested try catch block sequence. So within one sequence, you can put another sequence, and both the sequences could be enclosed within the try catch block. So if your inner sequence is unable to handle that exception, the outer catch block can handle it. So let us see how it works. How can you do? Now this is my parent try catch block, and let me put try catch. So you don't have to print the message box. You can print the messages using the other way also. I will show you that one as well. Now, where was my message box? And here I create one variable b, and again b dot upper, and just say exception. And I put some kind of messages. So this is the way we have arranged it. We have parent try catch block, and within parent try catch block there is a try catch, and in which what I have done, a dot upper message. So this statement will be executed, which is a part of the parent try catch block, and if there is no error, so it will go further into deep into the inside inner try catch block. So let us see when you execute this program, what will happen. It will print a message outer try catch exception. So why? Because the exception is raised here inside the parent try catch block, and the program get terminated. So it will go to the respective catch of its parent class, and this will be printed. Now what I will do, I will run the program, printing some message, hello world. Now in this case, hello world will be printed, then it will go inside the inner try catch block. Now inside the inner try catch block, you will see b dot to uppercase. Now again we have not initialized it, and it will throw an exception, so it will go to the catch block of its try, and within this I have mentioned the exception as inside inner try catch block. So if you want to get more clarity, that's the reason it has given a very good option of seeing the output in an Outlook view. So I have one sequence. Within sequence, I have a parent try catch block. Within parent try catch block, I have what I have. I have try, and with try I have two catch. One is handling the IO exception, the other one is the exception. Then I have the finally block. Now within try, what I have done, there is inside try there is one sequence, and there is one message box, and there is another try catch block, and within another try block, which is a part of the parent, there is try and catch. I have not placed anything inside the finally block. So this is the try catch block of this inner, and this particular is inside the sequence of parent. So that is what the nesting of try catch block in UiPath. So if an exception is being raised inside the parent one, it will be cached by the corresponding try catch block. If the exception is inside your inner try, it will be thrown to the corresponding catch block. If this particular block is not able to handle, then exception will be thrown to its parent one, just like in Java. So let us see here. Hello world, inside inner try catch block, inside family. So inside family is the last part of your my parent one. Now if I change here to some other exception, I just say IO exception, and I place one message box inside inner catch and run it. Hello world. So you can see the inner try catch block is unable to handle that exception, and that exception is being thrown to its outer try catch block. So outer try catch block can handle. Now it was IO exception, but the message it is of the null pointer exception. So same concept of .NET and Java. Now if you are not able to find your exception within this list, you can see by default system argument, null reference, invalid operation, system, right? So you can go with the browse for type, and same like I just say file not found exception, right? Or file format exception, file not found exception. So this way you can find it and you can map it, let it be file format exception. So this way you can add the exceptions in the list, inside the cache list. Very simple concept, no need to. Now, in Java, we have also throw and throws. Similarly, in UiPath, we have the throw clause and we have the rethrow, in fact, not throws. So in Java, what you do is you say class A public static. If you have multiple XML file not found, come on, so you tell to your caller that this method might throw these of the exceptions, file not found exception and null pointer exceptions. So in this case, you don't have to enclose your logic or your statement inside the try catch block. If you want to handle, then only you will place it. Otherwise, there is no need of it. So in UiPath, again, we have such statements which help you to create your own exceptions. How can we create our own exceptions in Java? Anyone from participants?
I think in .NET we inherit the class from the exception based class and then create the exception.
Yes, same is in Java. We just what we do in Java also. You can have one class, class A, then extends file not found exception file. So this way you extend your class with an exception class, and you can pass, you can call the superclass constructor, and you can send a message. This way you can do it. In same in UiPath we can create such exceptions. Let us see how we can do it. I just create one variable. Variable name could be variable 1 and So let me run. Inside exception, object not reference. So in this, what I have done is I have one try catch block, and within this, an exception would be raised here, and let me run it. So what I have done here is I have placed the sequence, and within sequence I have placed another statement in UiPath which is called throw statement. So throw statement will help you to explicitly throw an exception, to your caller, right? And so it will throw an exception. Earlier UiPath execution engine was throwing an exception. In this scenario, you have explicitly thrown an exception. And how you can throw an exception using this throw activity? What we need to do is, if you see the properties over here, it will expect a variable name, and variable name should be of an exception type. And here what I have done, I have created a variable1, and I have mentioned that this variable is of which type, file not found exception. And I have initialized this by creating an object of my exception class, file not found exception, and inside constructor I have given some kind of meaningful message. So what it will do, so this part will be executed, so it will throw an exception of what kind of, file not found exception, which will be cached by this block, exception block. And in this I have mentioned exception dot message. So file not found exception class is basically a subclass of your exception class. So the programs here, it will be terminated, and it will throw that exception to this particular block, and it will print the message. Now what the message is? Message is your hello world. Now what I have done, I have overridden the message. By default the message should have come at object reference or file not, because this is particular file not found exception. So what I have done, I have overridden the message. Just like in Java, what we do is passing some meaningful message to your superclass. That's the way you can override the message, and when you run it, you will get the hello world message instead of the other message which is expected. Then we can rethrow the exception to its caller explicitly also. How you can rethrow your exceptions? This way. There is another statement. Let me put it here. Rethrow. So what it will do? Rethrow will throw that particular exception which is caught by this particular catch block. Now in this case, the exception will be thrown, file not found exception, which will be handled by the catch block, exception block, and this message will be printed and it will again rethrow that message to its caller. Now in this case, this particular sequence is not been enclosed, this particular try catch block. There is no parent for this particular try catch block. So what will happen? Your program will be abruptly terminated. So if I place one message box after finally try catch, so what we'll see? So hello world, that means first I have thrown that exception, and you will get again this dialog, system generated dialog window. Main has thrown exception. Main is your file. Message is your, this is message. That is the source of your exception from where it has thrown. So source of this exception is your file not found exception. So this way you can rethrow your exceptions. So rethrow statement could be, need to be placed inside the catch block, and throw statement should be placed inside the try block. So that's you need to take care. And you can create your own messages by passing the respective exceptions. Now so far what we have used is the message box. We can also use, ideally we should have used write line. So what it is, write line is basically any message is just like you print in your Java or in .NET console.writeLine in .NET, or you use the system.out.println. So this particular message will be printed on the output. Now so I will just remove all these things. So we'll see, okay. So you will see inside the output window. So where is that output window? This is my output window. So output window, it will display these messages inside the console or output panel of UiPath. So this is the UiPath Studio. There is another panel which we called as output panel. So your message will be printed here if you are using the write line statements. So write line will print those messages. It should be a string type. It will print those messages inside the output panel. Now there are different buttons over there. If you want to have the timestamp, so you will see that timestamp is also coming when you started your program. The first statement hello inside write line, then again thrown, and the last message is when your program got terminated. Or so that is the message if you want to print into the output window. Now if you want to comment some kind of messages or activities, how you can do it? Like in Java also, or in any language, we use this statement, or we use this statement, or we use. So this way you put some kind of statement so that one-liner comment which is not executed. Sometimes you don't want certain section to be executed, so you place those code snippet inside this comment section in Java if you want to have only one line to be commented out. Similarly, we have those things in UiPath also. Let us see if I say comment here and I'll use okay. So for a developer to know what is this sequence is doing, what this activity is doing, so you have placed one activity called comment. So if you go to the properties, you can type any of the message here, and this particular part will not be executed. This particular section will not be executed. Now if you want this throw and message box to not to be executed and you want to comment it out, so this is particularly for a developer to know. But if you want these two activities not to be executed, just like we use this particular statement, so what I will do, I will use the comment out section and I will use these two statements and place those statement inside my comment out section. So what I have done is comment out section is these activities will not be executed when you run your program. Let me run it. After try catch block, so what was there after? So after try catch block, that means this is the message got printed because it has started somewhere from here. Try catch, then try, then some message will be printed under the hello inside right line, then comment, meaningful message, then comment out, then catches, that way no exception has been raised. So finally block got executed, and I think I have not placed anything on the finally, so only the message box which is after the try catch block is getting executed. So this part is getting executed because there is no exception. Why? Because I have placed my two statements inside the comment out section. So this way you can disable some of the activities which you do not want to execute it. Then we have the log messages. What is this log message? Let us see. So in your languages, when you do a development, so you always have some kind of loggers where you have those application log to be printed or log to be written. So you use different patterns and different APIs to handle those exceptions, and you load those property files, and based on whatever the properties that you have configured in your logger properties, your message will be displayed. Now similarly in UiPath we have the log message. What it will do, so it will ask different options: trace, info, warning, errors, and fatals. So these are the different severity levels. So if you want to display only the information, or if it is a warning to be logged, if an error to be logged, if a fatal or if trace to be logged, so you will select appropriate level of your trace or level of your error message, and what you will see those messages getting logged into the respective console. Let me clear this one and run it. So you will see log message, you will see a message is got logged, hello world, and now if I go back to the log files, let me go to the log files and let me delete this one and run it again, and also clean this. So I'll see hello world is printed, and this, so this is the message it get printed. This is the start time, this is the end time, and inside this you will find message got printed. This is a timestamp when this statement got executed. What kind of log that we have printed? It is showing it is of info type. Then what is this? Is the message. So hello world, and this is the message which I have printed. Then after this, this is the label. This is an information what I have message. This kind of is an information, so it is showing it is an information. This is the timestamp, and window identity, that means it is a key value pair. That means this format is called a JSON format. So if you see, this is a JSON format. I hope you know what is JSON format. So this is the information that are being logged in your log files, which can help you to understand what is going in the background, how your execution is happening. So this is my JSON format. I can use my APIs to read these values, and that's the way basically orchestrator is being designed. Any message which is being logged into their Elasticsearch system, it is using those APIs to read those messages. Now hello world is the message, the label is the information what kind of, so if I change the label here as warning, so warning will be logged. Then timestamp, then Asia Pacific, this is the workstation on which my execution, because there could be hundreds of boards. When you want to monitor those logs centrally from your common administration, so you should know which board has thrown this error message. So you should know the username and my credentials. Then agent session ID. So agent session ID is nothing but the agent session when this program started for this particular agent. Now agent is nothing but UiPath agent. So there could be hundreds of agents which are running on the machines. So this will help you to understand what was the session for this particular execution of program. Then the process name and the file name and the job ID. You can, so these particular things will give more clarity when you do an orchestrator. You manage your boards through an orchestrator, that will help you. Otherwise, if you have a single board on which different processes are running, then you can, because that this particular log file will print the error message of different processes when you put it on the production. So you should know what is this message and which execution is giving those messages. So this is the log file, and if I delete this and remove this and I change the here from, let it be error, So you'll see the label has changed from label to error, from information to error. Now you might ask, what is the need of having these things? Error, trace, warning, etc. Like if you do any kind of enterprise programming, or if any kind of web application or any kind of standalone application, right? Any message that you want to be print as a part of logging, so that you can understand where the program is and you can debug your programs. If you want to give a meaningful message to the end user, you need to have those messages in place. If there's an error, then you put that error message into the catch block, right? So in logger, if you use the logger in Java, here you can change the severity so that if you want to debug your program, you increase the severity as high. So when you say high, at runtime, all the message will be logged on. If you change the severity as low, only the respective message info or warning would be printed. So these are the different log appenders in Java. So you use them very often in your project. Similarly, when you are running your program in UiPath, what kind of message that you want to log in, those will help you to understand and debug your programs. Now inside the output panel, there are different options. Again, this is for the error, this is for the warning, this is for the information, this is for the trace. If you want to clean it, clean it. If you want to search a particular message from your log file, you can type it. Let me run it again.
Hello.
Yes.
Can we stop the logging in UiPath? I think it's make the application slow.
See, when you increase the trace level from info to trace, your performance degrade, right? But in production, you never increase your traces to a trace level until unless there is some issue in your production and you want to replicate on live. Keep in mind, but without
Yeah.
logs, you don't like any issue which is coming in your live without errors, how you are going to debug your programs. So which is a question, right? So
We can create custom logging in
irrespective
our
whether you
application.
create a custom logging, if irrespective, still you need a way to write those messages onto your log file, right?
Yeah.
Even you are writing, you will use the streams to write those messages into a file. Log appenders, all these different APIs will help you to don't focus on those. They have given all those APIs which help you to do the way which you are going to do. The question here is, which you have asking, whether I should use the logging or not. We have to
No,
use the loggings.
my question is we can create the logging on a particular code, not for all application, complete application.
I have shown, yeah, so I have shown the right line. The right line is also printing those messages on the console. But when you do a best practices or when you do a enterprise level of development, you need to use these options. Now it is up to your design whether you want to choose it or whether you don't want to choose it. I'm just showing the way you can log those messages onto your log file and use them for debugging. Then sometimes there is a need to uh, sometimes there is a need for logging some kind of variables also at runtime. There is an option called log fields. You can create your own custom fields which will hold the values, and those values could be logged into your log files. right? There would be some need of logging those values. Why this option is available? When we have multiple boards who are working in the background on different machines, you might want to pass those error messages right at runtime, and those values need to be printed. So that is the scenario where you use the add log field. I'm just mentioning that the way you can use it, add log field. So here you can mention the variable name and the value it is going to hold. So this value could be a variable or it could be anything, right? So I just pass. This could be any variable. I'm just giving you an example. If you want to log different variables, this could be an integer, date, time, boolean, any meaningful message that you want to add to your, then UiPath give an opportunity to add log fields. So what will happen when you will run your program? The field that you have added under the collection is, that means multiple values. So this is the variable. We are passing this as an in string hello world. And what is the need of having this in string? I will explain you when we are going to use this variable in exporting, or when we do a transaction between two different projects, when we do a transaction of two different processes which are running on two different boards. So that's an area where we need to pass those variable values, and whether the value is coming into this board or going out. That is the direction of it. Right now we don't have to worry about in and out. I will explain you separately. But when you will run this program, what will happen? Try catch, and let me see what is there into. So we'll see these are the two variables which I have added here. Argument 1, some variable value which might change at runtime. This variable will hold some kind of value. This might change at runtime. So you can add a variable value to your error messages so that it can be used for debugging purpose. So that is another way you can pass those fields values in your program for debugging across different boards or different processes. If you want to remove the log fields, you can remove it. Let me add it. So you can see these variables got added. Let me put some kind of messages also. I'm just deleting it. I'm cleaning it this one. So we'll see. I have added a message. I am there, which got logged into my. This is the message into right line. I am there, which is also been printed into the log file. And the variables names which I passed into this is also. So at runtime you can change these values for your any kind of debugging purpose. It could be the process name, it could be the job ID, it could be bot agent name, it could be any database transaction. So you can pass any kind of meaningful information, and UiPath has given an opportunity to log those values inside your messages. So so what we have learned so far: try catch, then try catch finally. Then we have learned nested try catch. Then we have learned how to handle those exceptions inside try catch and try catch nested try catch. Then we have used the throw statement. Then we have used the throw statements. We have used how how you can comment out your sections, how can you comment out your activities, how you can trace those errors, understand those errors where those looks are getting printed. Then these are the different buttons. If you want to see the information, it will show the information from your log file. If you want to see the warnings, so it will print the warning messages. So these are the different highlighters that you have. If you want to clean the console, you can clean the message. If you want to see the timestamp, you can see the timestamp. Now, if there is another option, an annotation. Let's suppose sometime we use in Java very often. Let's suppose we have class A box, integer length. Right. So I just comment out this is data member holding integer value length of a box. Right. This is some kind of message. Similarly, you can give a meaningful message to a developer so that you can see what this variable is for. So what I can do here, I can just click a right button over this, add annotation. So you will see you have added an annotation, and generally annotations are the endorsement. That is why it is showing an icon of a stamp. So if you bring your cursor over here, this will a tooltip will come. The variable will hold the string value. So if you want to edit it, you can edit it. If you want to delete it, you can delete it. Similarly, if you want to comment out, if you want to know what this sequence is doing, you can pass a meaningful message to this sequence also. So let's suppose I want to annotate this particular log field, or I want to annotate then I want to annotate this one. So the moment you will bring your cursor, this message will perform file handling, this message will from. So this way you can add some additional, you can add comment out sections to make your program meaningful, etc. If you want, so that's all around the error handling. Then we will go to the next topic. So if anybody in doubts, then please do let me know. Great. So silence is no doubts. So moving to the next topic that we have is the debugging. So debugging is an option where you want to see how your program is behaving when you are running these programs. So when you run your program and there is an issue that you want to debug line by line in any of the language. So what you do is you put some kind of breakpoints and you watch the variables values at runtime, and you use those statements like step into and step over, etc. So same thing if you want to debug your board where it is behaving exceptionally. So you can debug your programs. So if you want to debug your programs, what we will do, so let us make it a little meaningful. Well, some of the people are reaching to me around the presentation and all that. Now, for any kind of development work, I generally don't prefer to have those presentations in place until there is a concept which we need to understand. These are the complete technical stuff, so I can't write, I can't have those presentation to be ready, so nothing is there into my PPT. So anything which comes into mind, I just play around with my code. Some of you people would be looking for some kind of exercise. So far this is very basic one, fundamentals of any language. What we are learning is how you can use them in UiPath. I'm not going into the concept because I know that you people are already from the basic language background, so I'm not focusing on this. When the concept will start on the UiPath, then then you will understand, and then you will get lots of exercise. Then moving to the debug statement. No, what I was looking for. Let me define one variable. So let me run it. I'm just running this program. First value it is asking 10, 20, 20, and the sum is. So let me debug it. Just for debugging, what we need to do is just click on this button, debug button, or you can press the function key F7. So when you run your program in debug mode, another property panel is being launched that is called the variable panel. So we'll see now the program has been executed under the debug mode, and a window is coming in front of you which is called the variable panel. So here you can watch the values of those variables which you have declared and how the values is going to change. And you can also see the first activity, which is the sequence, right, is being highlighted. The borderline is showing the yellow color. That means this is the part which is getting executed. And you will see an arrow marks. It will show where your execution layer is, so that a developer can debug and go into one by one. So the first dialog is it is going into the sequence, and it is prompting me to enter some value. I just enter 89. So we'll see 90. So Now it has gone to the sum is 179. Now you will see the variables values has changed from 0 to 89. 90 is this one. C is 179. Now value is the property of my assign activity. So this is the value which is holding 179. Then press OK. So this is the way you can debug the programs. Now if I want to put some kind of toggle button here, want to have some watcher, let me toggle it. Now if I run these programs and just give 79, 89. Now here it is, my program is also getting uh, being stopped. So you will not feel the difference the program is being stopped because I have placed these two statement input dialog box, both input dialog box. What is it is doing, you are not getting the difference of how debug is working. So let me remove this two dialog box and put some kind of other statements.
Can we read the multiple values from a single input dialog box?
Input expect only one value.
If
You
we
can
put
pass
that in a for loop, like then
input dialog
like
box. Input dialog box only the user is able to enter only one value. So the variable will hold only the one value. If you want
is
to
there
give an
any is there any another other option to read multiple value?
in .NET we have the input dialog box, right? Then what kind of values you want to read?
Like if we want to read 10 values from user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 10,
How you
and
can
in .NET we write for loop and console.readline.
so but that doesn't give an option to read 10 values. You are iterating your program the same 10 times, right?
Yeah.
That's the same thing here also.
So for 10 values we have to put 10 input dialog box.
For 10 values, if you want to get, you have to place your input dialog box inside your for loop and it will be iterated 10 times and you can read those values into an array or wherever you want.
Okay.
Yeah. But if
Okay.
you know there is already certain values which user need to select, then you can pass an array into an input dialog box and that will come as a radio buttons. So let me remove this toggle button and also this message. Now I'm just going to run this program in debug mode. What will happen? The program got executed. I didn't got the chance what it did. It started from sequence, then it has selected first activity, then second activity, and the third activity. And it is also showing some messages, meaningful messages. So if you want to debug your program one by one, slowly, there one option is just use this slow step. Activate this button slow step and run it. Then you will see around 1 second of time it is taking to execute this particular, and you can watch the values accordingly how the program is being executed. So slow step will slowly execute each activity one by one, and if it is disabled, then it will run within fraction of seconds, so you'll not be able to see what it is going in the past. If you want to put some kind of watcher, let's suppose if I want to see here what is an issue, so I will put a breakpoint. Now let me run in again in the debug mode. So we'll see the part 1, the activity 1 got executed, 2 got executed. Here my program is waiting. What should I do? So you can see the values of A and B is still 0, 0, and I'm doing some kind of calculation. So you can watch the values. Then either you can go into the step into or step over. So you can use the step over. So that part got executed, step over, step over, step over. Step into, then step into, step into, step into. Step into is like one by one you want to execute your program and see how it is working. You can put the breakpoints, you can remove the breakpoint, you can stop the execution running. If you want to terminate the program, you can use stop execution. You want to continue with it, you can use the continue button. So it is up to you what kind of options that you want to use it. Now at runtime, I also want to see where now this is a program, but in runtime, when you do actual live scripting, then you also want to see where is my cursor or which activity is being executed. Let's suppose, let me do some kind of scripting in real-time environments. And just remove these statements and do go to design. So I have trained my robot to accept 2 values from this particular site, and somehow I want to debug this, right? So what I will do, can you please mute your phone? There is some disturbance coming. Anyone? Just mute your phone. So let me run this bot again. What it will do, it will enter the username password. Let me clean this. I'm just removing it. Now let me run it. Okay, so you'll see the bot value has been. So either you want to focus where is this which is my activity being captured in debug time. What I will do, there is an option called highlight elements, right? Highlight elements, what we will do, let me run it in debug mode. So highlight element, what it will do, it will highlight this particular activity, the UI element which I have used it. Now let me debug it and show the browser. So you can see the activity is also getting highlighted. So that will help you. So that there are thousands of UI elements. When I say UI element, that means different kind of UI buttons are there, checkboxes there, menu is there, and want to debug where this is falling, and you want to highlight that particular execution in debug mode. So you can use this option highlight element. So what it will do, so the way you have trained it, it will also highlight this particular section. Now it is executing this part, this will execute this part. So if I want to highlight this button during my debug mode, so it will also highlight that part. So let me show you. So now it is entering this value, now it is entering this value. Now I can put some kind of debugs here. And put it me into the debug mode. So you'll see this is waiting for my prompt. What action I need to take? I go into the step into. Then I again go into the step into. And then again I go into the step into. So this way, you have seen that whenever I start debugging, each activity is highlighted with yellow boundaries or yellow borders. So what we can do here is, if you do not want that part to be highlighted, so we'll say highlight, just make it disabled. Now you'll see what. Let me remove that toggle point also. Now you will see none of the activity is getting highlighted with yellow color. So it is up to you what kind of option that we have. Highlight elements, that means runtime you want to see which element it is working on during the debug mode. Highlight the activity, this particular activity will be highlighted with the yellow color border colors. You want to log the error messages, so this is the way you can do this debugging accordingly. If you want to slow down the debug process, see one by one. So one option is you can use this slow step. So slowly the UiPath will going to execute your program in debug mode. So this way you can put a watcher. So from the best practices, we should always use the proper loggings. We should always use the error handling. We should always use debugging for doing your debugs. Then there is also one option is continue on error. There is one property called continue on error. So if I make it boolean true, that means irrespective this error message comes or not comes, your program will not be terminated. So you can avoid to have the try catch block in that. And so I will explain in separately what this continue on error here is. So this is what we have completed today. The run, the debug, the validation, the breakpoints. You can put step into, step over. You can slow down the process. You can highlight the UI element. You can highlight the activity. You can see the logs. You can understand the logs, and that's way. So moving to the next topic that we have here, it is data tables. So this is what we have completed so far. We have learned variables, declaration variables, control statements, exception handlings, debug handlings, and now we are going to start with the data tables. Then we'll do the PDF automation and Excel automation and the CSV automations. So before we start those automations, first we need to understand what are data tables. Data tables, if you are from the .NET backgrounds, you know very well. But if you are from the Java background, so we have record sets in Java or result sets that you call it specifically. So when you do programming with the database, what you do, you create a connection object, then you create a statement object, then you execute a query on your statement object, and it returns a result set. A result set will hold the data, the records, and you use different methods of over the result set to get the column value or the row values etc. So similarly in UiPath we have the data tables. The data table will hold the data into memory, and it would be a relational data. That means it will have the rows, it will have the columns. You can extract one value uh, from the corresponding column. Now there are different ways to create the data tables. You can do it programmatically. You can generate during your design time. You can create data tables from different sources. So in UiPath, the data table can is being generated through Excel sheets, PDF, then we have CSV, and many more. So if you have an Excel sheet which has data into a sheet, you can pull that data and store into a data table. If you have a data in CSV format, you can pull that data from a CSV file and put it into a data table. You can convert that data table which is there into a relational model relation. You can convert it into a string, or you can write that data back to an Excel sheet or CSV files. Hence, it is important to understand how data tables works. You can create data table programmatically. That means you can create an object of the data table, then you can add the columns, and you can specify what kind of data type this particular column will hold. It would be number, string, data type, anything. You can put a constraint on your columns, like it will hold the null value or it will hold maximum characters of X number length. So these are the methods which are already available in the data table that you can use it. Why I'm explaining all this? Because, for example, if you are doing any kind of Excel programming, right? So the data is when you write anything on an Excel sheet, by default the format is of your data when you type in your cell is of journal, right? And there is some data which is coming from Excel sheet, and you want to do some kind of calculation on that data, and both has to extract the data from an Excel and do some kind of manipulation. Now the data is coming into a journal or text format, and you need to convert into a format for which you can do some kind of calculations. So in that way, you need to store the data with respect to the columns. So if the data is coming in the text, it need to be stored into the data table, having the data type of that column as a text only. Otherwise, it will throw runtime exception. So to avoid all those exceptions at runtime, you need to ensure the columns that you are defining in your data table should match the column data types versus their values. So let us see how you can create a data table using the UiPath if there is no source. So one option here is build data table. So if you type the data table, you will find an option under programming's data tables, build data tables. Now just click on once. So a dialog window will come. Here you can give the name and the so I have explained data table is nothing but a relational tables which will hold the data into tabular format. So I'll add one column. Let it be name. It will hold the string. I will allow null, auto increment, default value, unique, maximum length. Okay. Let me add employee ID. It could be integer, allow null, and okay. Designation, allow null. Okay, so these are the three values which I have added. Columns added, employee num, employee ID, and designation. So let me add some data over here. Employee name is Manoj. Employee ID some value, and AP. With tab you can switch to the new row. Just click once. You can add another employee name, Harish. He's also AP. Then we have some name could be Ramesh. Let it be P1. Jolly. Also P1. So manager. So just click OK. So what I have done, this is the design I have created. So I need to store the reference what I've created. Let me store it into a variable. Create variable. Real name is DT. And just given. Right. So it has not created. Let me create one variable. DT. It is not creating. It is not creating. Control. So I've created one variable and assign that will let me iterate the values within your data table. So I will use a for each. Now, day before yesterday, I explained there are two different kinds of for each. One is within the control flow, and the other one is the data table. So, for any kind of manipulation that you want to do for over the data table, you will use the for each, which is there into the data table. So, what I will use, I will not use the control flow. The control flow is very generic. I respect any kind of collection type. For data table, it is good that it you use this for each statement. So for each basically nothing but it also expect a data table name. Here data table name is DT. So for each what we will do, it will read the first row and it will assign into the variable row. It could be anything. It could be A1, B1, whatever you want to give. So each time the program, the UiPath will extract the value, the records, the entire record, and it will store into a row. Now here the row data type is data row. So within the data row of .NET, it's again a class in .NET. So you can use those methods which are there into the data row so that you can use those methods and update your values. You can read those values. So let me use the right line. Right line, row of 0 plus row of 1 plus row of toString because it returns an object. Just convert into toString because I am printing into right line. It is up to you where you are going to write those values. Run it once. So you'll see the output over here. I don't want timestamp. So Manoj, let me give some kind of space so that it will help to understand better. Clean it. So you'll see I've iterated those values which I've hard coded Manoj 120 something, right? So you can read the values by passing the column name or by index number. So if you go to the Microsoft MSDN site, you can find the methods which are there inside your for each. If you want to add a new row, we can add a new row using the data table. I will show you that one as well so that it don't become a very generic. But this is the way you use the data tables. You have built your data table, you have assigned that values, you have iterated that values. You can also use the column name. So I've given the column name. Here I've given the index number, the column name. So I will just going to pause here. So let's connect tomorrow same time and continue with the data tables. We'll use different methods to create a record or insert a record or delete your records and many more methods within the data table. And we'll try to complete two automations, PDF and Excel and data table. So we'll try to complete three different topics, Excel, then PDF, and the third one is data tables. So before I close, any doubts from anyone?
Hi Suresh.
Yes.
Can we do remote desktop connections by using? We can make it automate, like how to open that by giving username, password, and other detailed things. Can we do that automate?
So you are saying that I just go to the run and just say RDP MSTC something
Yeah, MSCST.
MC
C.
MC
MSCTC. MSCST.
So you want to give the user and password, right?
Yeah, computer name and
Yeah,
username
you
and
can,
password.
you can do anything, even your machine is locked off. If I have still
I mean
username,
the flow. What is the flow for that? I mean how to
wait
do.
for 2-3 classes, I will show you, don't worry.
And I want to open some applications, and
Yes.
there are some commands which automatically I need to run it.
Yeah. You can
Those
do it.
details.
Not an issue.
Okay.
ठीक है?
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
let's once we'll reach to that topic, we will be able to complete that part also. So any other doubt before I close for today?
Suresh,
Yes.
hello. Yes, do you have any syllabus copy? If you have it, can you share that?
Syllabus is yes. Hmm. This is the syllabus that we are going to cover in these sessions. Introduction to UiPath, variable data type control flow, data manipulations, recordings, advanced selector, image automation, and advanced tricks, Excel, PDF, email automation, debugging and exception handling, and project automation. So far what we have completed, introduction to UiPath, variable data type control flow. We have completed the debugging and exception handling. Now we have started the data tables, which is coming under the data manipulation, and we would be completing the Excel and data table and PDF tomorrow. So I can share this an Excel sheet, which is the content
Oh,
of this session.
okay. Okay, Suresh. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. So let's connect same time tomorrow. Bye.